All right, so chapter 10.2 talks about time value of money, okay? Something we must understand about time value of money is that as we go on through the years doing business, we have to understand that the value of the dollar does change over time. Right now, the dollar is very, very, very stretched out right now, right? Gas is about almost $5 to $6 right now. Food is very expensive, and the amount of money that we're making isn't enough. Now, that's just because we are currently in a recession slash depression right now. So, these things happen over time, especially if you take a look back now, right? Back then, you can buy gas for used to be 99 cents a gallon. That was 20 some years ago, 30 some years ago, even actually. Back then, now you can see, right? The dollar can go pretty much farther in life back then, 20, 30 years ago. But right now, the value of the dollar has changed significantly due to any of these following factors that can happen, right? We could have a financial upbringing, right? Or in this case, we could have inflation, all right, recession, or we could even have an economic up, okay? Now, with that in mind, right? When we actually take a look at a dollar, right? The dollar is still a dollar today, right? What do you mean by the value of the dollar has significant change? Well, obviously, like back then, a dollar was worth more, right? You're able to buy much more items with that dollar, where nowadays you aren't able to buy anything for a dollar, right? Even the Dollar Tree store is not a Dollar Tree anymore. It's $1.25 now. So again, times have changed due to the market and due to the just things like recession and inflation. When you're pumping more money into the government system, right, and it's causing inflation. So in reality, right, the dollar still represents a dollar, but if you're comparing to foreign currencies, it's definitely lost its value over time. So that is what I mean about the dollar losing its value over time, and it will continue losing value over time as we go through the society and going through more economic situations. Okay, so with that being said, there are two things that we're going to be talking about, which is going to be simple interest and compound interest. Interest in general, right? Now, I'm going to be teaching you in this case, because when we take a look at the value of the dollar, right, what kind of ways can we expand that dollar, or in this case, multiply the dollar? Well, you can choose either or, which is going to be using simple interest to invest in bank securities, right? We also talked about other ways that you could generate income, and this would be another option, right, is to invest into bank securities that increase in value over time. This rule here is one of those exceptions that allow us to purchase something, right, and it allows us to go to ignore the historical cost value, because of course when you buy a bank security at $10, right, 10 years from now it's not going to be worth $10. It's going to be worth, I don't know, $50. Okay, so with that being said, right, that is what we're looking at here, is what are we doing when we want to calculate things that we're investing, like bank securities, loans. All right, so these are what are the common factors. Now, the huge differences between simple interest versus compound interest, right, is basically, well, if you look at the variables, right, the only difference is by one variable, but the formula is also completely different as well. Now, with simple interest, right, the key factor here is that we understand that Simple interest means that you're only getting multiplied interest one time. So over a lump sum amount, okay? Whereas compound interest is you're gonna be calculated interest multiple times throughout the year, and it's based on the new current balance. So basically you are piling interest on top of interest on top of interest, right? So again, common ones that we normally see would be bank loans or credit cards, right? That is where you're getting interest, right? Charged on interest on top of interest, right? You're getting multiplied the interest multiple times throughout one whole year, opposed to one time for one lump sum amount, okay? So let's focus on one at a time, okay? So in this case, let's take a look at simple interest, right? What are the components that make up simple interest? Well, you're going to need a principal, right? Your principal is going to represent what your original investment is. So in this case, right, whatever amount that you decide to buy a bank bond at is going to be your principal, right? Your interest is going to be in terms of a rate, which is usually an annual percentage rate, meaning it is this rate is for the whole year, okay? Now, unless stated otherwise, usually if it's stated APR, then it's an annual percentage rate. But if it's rate per month, then it will tell you that, okay? But in this case, most commonly, rates are usually an annual percentage, and time should be measured in terms of years, okay? So if there's any reason where you have a short-term loan or a short-term bank bond, then you're going to have to convert the time in terms of years, okay? How much of the year are you actually calculating, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look here. And then again, the difference between simple and compound is, well, compound has one more feature, which is the n, which is the number of times it's going to be compounded. All right? So that's the huge difference here. But, so again, let's focus on simple interest first. Okay? So when we talk about simple interest, right, what are we actually looking for? We are looking to multiply the interest rate over a lump sum amount, right? So in this case, here's the formula. When we think about interest, we need to think about principal times rate times time, right? If you guys know the mnemonic device here, right? Pretty, right? PRT equals I, pretty, okay? And of course, future value is going to be your principal plus the interest. Okay, so down below, here's the actual equation. So I equals P RT, while FV equals P plus I. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at an example. So in this example, right, you decided to buy a bank bond worth $100,000. The interest rate is going to be 6%, and it can be redeemed in 5 years. So in this case, right, what are we looking into? So we're looking to buy a bank security, okay, worth $100,000, and we obviously bought it with cash. Okay? So if we were to redeem it in 5 years, let's go ahead and calculate how much interest we would actually be collecting. So here, principal, we know exactly what was our original investment. It was that $100,000, right? The rate is 6%. This is what you normally do. You need to convert the percentage into decimals. So that's going to give you 0.06, okay? You move the decimal over 2 places, if you remember math, that rule. So you're converting the percentage into decimals. So again, 6% is going to equal 0.06, okay? And time is already in years. It's 5 years, okay? So now that we have these key information, now we can plug it into our formula to solve for interest, right? Interest is principal times rate times time. So in this case, 100,000 times 0.06 times 5 is going to give us $30,000. Okay? So now that we found what interest was, we now need to plug it in to solve for future value, which is going to be your principal plus your interest. So in this case, my principal was $100,000 plus $30,000, your future value. So that means if you buy this bank bond, in 5 years, you are going to be collecting $30,000 worth of interest, and that means your bank bond is going to be worth $130,000. Okay? So then how are you going to redeem your bank security? Well, in this case, you're going to receive the cash for $130,000. Your bank security was originally $100,000, and interest income, right? Because you earned the interest off of investing your money, right? So in this case, the interest income is going to be $30,000, right? And that's what you do with bank securities. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. All right, so let's take a look at compound interest, right? What's the difference between a compound interest and what we just did, simple interest, right? So in this case, simple interest, we only multiplied the interest one time. So let's take a look at this example here, right? What if this time you actually bought a bank bond for $100,000 and the interest rate is 6%, however, it's being compounded quarterly. That means every quarter, which is every 3 months, you're going to get calculated the interest, okay? And of course, it can also be redeemed in 5 years. So journalize what happens if you buy the bank bond as of January 1st of 2015. So in this case, right, same journal, right? We're going to acknowledge that we bought a bank security for $100,000. Now, here's the difference between the calculations. Compound interest is going to be like this, where interest is going to be your future value minus your principal, okay? That means I need to solve for future value. Future value is going to be your principal times, parentheses, 1 plus your rate divided by the number of times compounded, parentheses, up to the square root of the number of times compounded times time, okay? So that's a mouthful. So down here below is your equation. Now, if you're looking into calculating this on the calculator, you are unfortunately unable to do so if you're using a regular standard calculator. You do actually need a graphic calculator to be able to punch this in and be able to get the answer. But that's okay. I don't want you to invest $100 on a graphic calculator when you have Excel, okay? But if you are using Excel, you have to put this exact equation in your cell precisely, or else you will not be able, you'll get an error, okay? So in this case, let's go ahead and figure out what it is, and I'll show you how to plug it into Excel, okay? So starting with this, you recognize what the principal is, which is $100,000, right? That was your original investment. Your rate is 6%, which is 0.06. Number of times compounded. If you're going to get it compounded quarterly, right? That means every quarter of the year, you're going to get compounded. So that means 4 times a year, right? Quarterly means 4 times a year. Okay? And of course, the time is in years already, so it's 5 years. Okay? So now we need to solve for future value first, which is going to be plugging it into this equation right here. All right? So if you are plugging this into Excel, this is your formula. You need to plug in $100,000, right? You're going to do the asterisk. So again, equal to activate your formula. You're going to do 100,000. You're going to multiply it, okay, with the asterisk. You're going to open your parentheses. You're going to put 1 plus another open parentheses, your R, which is 0.06, divided by N, which is 4, okay, close parentheses, close parentheses. You're going to use this caret, okay? This caret means it's going to be uprooted to the exponent, okay? So in this case, once you put that arrow in there, then you're going to do another open parentheses, the number times compounded, which is 4, times time, which is going to be 5. And then you can end your parentheses there. It is very crucial that you remember how many parentheses that you have open, and you must have the equal same exact number closed, okay? Now Excel will highlight the colors for you so you know how many parentheses have you opened and how many you've closed. But the rule of thumb here is you have to be very careful of where you place your parentheses, because Excel is very similar to a computer, right? When you talk its language, it will understand what you're telling it to do. So exactly how we do in regular math, right? We follow the rules of order of operations. So in this case, we do, if you guys remember back in math, PEMDAS is a thing, right? Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, adding, and then subtracting, right? In this case, in reality, right, we know what to do, but Excel doesn't. So you have to tell Excel how you want each section to be calculated. So in this case, you need to calculate what R divided by N is, and then you need to add the 1 to it, and then you need to exponent by the number of the N times T, okay? So you're telling Excel exactly how you want it to be calculated, okay? So once you punch this into the Excel, you should get the answer of 134,685 and 50 cents. Okay? So then now, last question is, what is the interest? Well, interest is going to be future value minus principal. So in this case, future value is 134,685.50 minus the $100,000. Your interest is $34,685.50. Okay? All right. So in this case, right, with the time frame and the length that we chose, right, compounding it multiple times generated us $4,000 more, $4,500 more than we were to use simple interest, okay? But that's not always true that compound interest will yield you the most money, okay? It depends on the length of time and the interest rate that you're looking at, okay? And today, when we do our exercise, we'll compare and contrast between the two. And you're going to see that sometimes it may be a little better to do compound interest because you get more out of it. But sometimes simple interest will generate more than compound. Okay. So any questions here? I'm going to take that as a no. Okay? So now that we figured that out, how do we claim our money or redeem our bank security? So in this case, right, we will claim $134,685.50, right? Our original bank security cost us $100,000, and then we acknowledge that we earned interest income for $34,685.50. Okay? So that's just talking about investing into those types of securities, right? So let's take it up a notch where we are going to talk about how does interest get calculated, okay? So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and talk about compounded interest, right? Because how is it calculated? In this case, right, we talked about that bank security, right, being $100,000, right? How do we know it's generating the amount of interest? This is how it is calculated, right? If we're going on a month-to-month basis, right? So if we started out with $10,000 $1,000, right, at 0% interest, because usually when you claim your first one, right, it's usually you don't get charged the interest until afterwards, okay? So therefore, that means you don't get the minute you claim your bank security, right? You don't get any interest collected on it. Okay, typo right there. So how do I calculate this interest? Well, let's say if I am going to be looking at the month of January and then compare it to the first year, right? We are looking at March, right? So because we're getting compounded every quarterly, right? Since 6% is going to be a annual percentage, right? We must take that annual percentage and divide it by however many months that you're actually going to be using, because it's an annual rate, right? And if I'm getting compounded every quarter, right, that means I need to divide that 6% by 4, okay? And that's going to give me a rate of 0.015, okay? Because this time I'm calculating how much interest I'm going to be collecting for that quarter, because compounded means you're getting calculated that interest for that length of time, okay? Or this is the how many times you're going to get compounded for the whole entire year. So in this case, in this first quarter, I'm going to get calculated the interest by 0.015, okay? So if you multiply these two numbers together, right, this is supposed to be 100,000, but in this case, it'd be 1,500, right? And if you do 1,500, you add that together, you're going to get now $500, right? So now that I got the interest for $1,500, right? Let's see what happens for the next quarter. Okay, so the next quarter is going to be June, right? You're going to take your principal, which in this case, because we're stacking interest on top of interest, right? Our new principal now becomes $101 and $500, right? So again, we're going to multiply it by that quarter of a percentage of a rate, and that's going to yield me a total of 1,000. I'm so sorry, these numbers are so off. $1,522.50. So that's going to give me a total of $103,022.50. And then of course, it's going to repeat over and over. So this is how interest is calculated over the course of one whole year. Okay? See, and that's how it works. So this is so then you don't have to really again, this is so then when you do invest in these bank securities or bank bonds or something like this, right? You can see if you're going to get the best deal out of whatever the bank is going to offer you, okay? By calculating this on the side. Are you going to choose simple interest or are you going to choose compound interest, right? And you'd be able to get a rough estimate of what your end result's going to be. So that's why it is so important for you to know how interest works. Okay? All right? So any questions here? Okay? All right. Okay? Interest and payments on a loan. So here's something that will be probably more common than a bank security, right? Not many people have enough money to invest in those kind of options. So here's something that is actually going to be much more relatable, is taking a business loan out, or, taking a credit card out, right? This is so important because this is how you can calculate how much interest that can be calculated on these types of loans, right? Because this one calculates loans a little bit differently because they take into factor that you're making a payment, right? So every time you go to the bank, right, and you take out a loan, right, they're crunching numbers on the side and they're not showing you anything until they come up to you and say, we ran your credit score, this is what you can afford, this is your monthly payment, this is your interest. Do you agree, yes or no? So in this case, how in the world are they calculating this number, and how are they calculating this this payment that we're coming up with? Well, this is where I'm going to show you how it is being done. So first off, we're going to look at how much interest you are actually paying and how many payments will affect your end result with your principal in hand. Now, when you apply for a bank or business loan, okay, or a credit card, it's a liability once again because you're owing and you're agreeing to the interest that they are charging you, okay? So let's take a look, okay? So this is the formula you're going to be utilizing when it comes to looking at figuring out what happens when I take a loan and how are my payments calculated and how much interest is actually being charged. So this one's even more mumbo jumbo. I'm not going to test you on this, but it is something good to know for your future if this loan is actually worth taking or not. Okay, and the amount of interest and the amount of the amount of interest that you're paying on it is going to be definitely something you want to take a look into. Okay. So, for example, right, let's go ahead and take a bank loan for $10,000, okay? And it has an annual percentage interest rate of 4.75% APR, and it is going to be compounded, of course, every month. Usually loans, credit cards, or some kind of along the lines, it's usually a monthly reoccurring interest that they're charging you every single month, okay? And of course, the bank approves the loan and expects you to be paid back in 5 years. So now that I have all my key components, let's go ahead and actually obtain this bank loan, okay? So in this case, I got money for it and now I created a liability for my bank loan, okay? So let's actually take a look at how the interest is going to accrue on this bank loan, okay? If we were to just pay it off within the 5 years, right? So in this case, that's exactly what I did. We have $10,000 principal. We got the 4.75% interest. We're going to get it compounded 12 times because it's every month. And it's going to be paid off in 5 years. So in this case, if you actually plug it into payment, right, you can do this in Excel. You have the payment function as well. So this is how it's going to be solved and plugged in, right? I just plugged it in again. You don't need to know this, but it is definitely something that can apply for you in the future. So in this case, when I plug in all my numbers, right, I'm going to get a total of $178.57. And that is just your payment. That's how much money you're paying every single month in the course of 5 years. So that means 60 total payments of $178.57. Okay? Now, what does this actually payment include? In this case, if you did not know this, when you take a bank loan, you're paying all the interest first, and then you're actually tapping into your principal a year or two later. Okay? So, did you know every payment that you make, this is only covering the interest that you are obligated. So, they've already charged you the interest ahead of time. They already charged you the 4.75% interest off of the $10,000 you borrowed. They've already taken into consideration that is going to be included in the price of your payment. So this is non-negotiable, okay? So if you do not know this, well, now you know. When you take a bank loan, you are subject to pay the interest off first, and then any dollar after that will actually go towards your actual principal. So that's why a lot of people recommend, hey, make multiple payments on your loan, because at the end of the day, you're always going to pay the interest off first, and then you will pay your principal. So that's why all the time when you're doing a loan and you're making your payments, right, you make your monthly payments every single time, you never actually see your principal drop, right? And that's the reason why, okay? All right, so now that we figured that out, let's actually talk about what the future value is now if I were to take out the loan and be able to see how much money this total amount is going to be. So again, you're going to take your future value, you're going to multiply it by 12, and you're going to multiply it by 5. So that's going to give you a total of $11,254.20. That's a whole $1,000, $1,254 of interest you've already paid. Okay? All right? So make sure you are very careful about what agreements that you make, because the bank's not going to tell you you're gonna pay your interest off first and then slowly pay your principal. Okay? If they told you that, no one would be taking bank loans, right? But in this case, that is the reality of what banks do. Is that's where they get their money. Is that they make you pay the interest off first, and then slowly by little you start actually tapping into your actual principal that you originally owed. Okay. So again, how does this interest actually be calculated? Well, let's take a look, right? If you got a grand total of $1,100 right? 11,000, right? That's $1,254 worth of interest. So how is it actually calculated? Well, let's take a look here. January, right? Again, the date that you get the loan, you never get the interest charge because it's usually the month following. Okay, so for the month of January, your principal is now 0 because you don't get charged interest until the following month, right? You haven't accrued the interest yet. So when you take the loan out, you take it at its face value, which is the $10,000, right? Then, of course, when you actually receive the bill, right, and your monthly payment is that $187.57 like we talked about, right? How does this apply, and how much are you actually putting into interest versus how much is actually going to go towards your principal? So in this case, right, usually your minimum payment that you are required to make a payment for generally, again, covers majority of it is for the interest, and then a small portion of it actually goes to your principal. So how does that work? So let's take a look here. February rolls around. How do I calculate the interest? Well, same thing, right? This interest rate is an annual percentage. We need to calculate it so then we know how much of that percentage is going to be charged per the month. So we know it's 4.75%. We're going to divide that number by 12 to get our monthly interest, which in this case is 0.003958. So then we're going to go ahead and calculate how much interest is going to be. So in this case, we multiply the two, we get $39.58 worth of interest. So that means our current balance is going to show up on our bank statement or credit card statement, loan statement, that you owe $10,039.58. So you go ahead and proceed by making a payment, right? So once you make that payment, now you reduce your amount by the payment, right? So how are you going to be calculating this, okay? You're obviously going to be paying the bank loan. However, remember what I told you. You always pay the interest off first. So in this case, I'm going to pay the interest expense because I incurred an expense. And then you're going to put the value of what you paid. Now, in this case, we did calculate how much interest it was for the month of February. It was for $39.58. So that means I'm going to pay $39.58 towards interest. And then whatever remaining amount is actually going to go to my principal, which is only going to be $147.99. So think about it. That's why they always tell you, if you get the minimum payment, pay a little more than the minimum, because then you'll actually tap into your principal. But this is how they make their money, is that they always have you pay, and they take the money immediately for the interest that they've already charged you. Okay? All right? So then what happens when you make that payment? Then you're now reduced, your new balance is now $9,852.01. And then you're going to rinse and repeat, and then it's going to be the same amount. So then now that principal carries over, and this is where interest gets piled on top of interest on top of interest. Okay? Now, if you're making the minimum payment, that is why your principal never gets reduced, because you're barely tapping into it. You're paying the interest off first, and then whatever remaining amount is left over, then it becomes part of the principal afterwards. So you're actually not paying your interest off, or you're not paying the principal off. So there you go. So here you go. I calculated. It's now $939. So now your new current balance is $9,891.01. You make your payment, and then so on and so forth. Okay. So that is how interest is collected when you take a bank loan, a car loan, a business loan, a home loan, whatever kind of loan that you take out. This is what is being calculated every single month. Okay? All right? And then here's one for the whole year. Okay? So any questions in regards to interest in general, right? We took a look at what happens when you invest money into something, and then we took a look at what happens when you borrow money, right? Any questions about interest? Okay, well then, let's go ahead and dive right into the 10.2 exercises, okay? So question number 1 here, all right, tells me that we are going to be doing a simple interest problem here, all right? You bought a bank bond worth $225,000 and $500, right? And this simple interest rate is 7.45%, and it can be redeemable after 3 years. How much interest will be collected at the end of 3 years? So this question is, what is it asking? It's asking you how much interest you will be collecting after 3 years. So how do we solve for interest?
We multiply the principal times rate times time. So 225,500 times 0.0745.
Okay.
Times 3.
Times 3. So that's going to give me a total of $550,399.25. Okay. Okay, so let's do that again. If it's supposed to be this times this times this, should be $50,399.25. Okay. So then if I had to find out, right, if the question asked you differently, right, and said, how much is the bank bond going to be worth in 3 years? What is it? What am I asking for? Right, we're looking for future value. So in this case, what is my future value going to be?
$275,899.25.
Okay, so you're going to
That's
take your
okay.
principal plus 50,000, not 5,000. And that's going to give me 275,899.25. Okay, so that's simple interest. Okay, so let's take a look at an example right here where we have to actually convert time. Okay, so let's take a look at this, right? If the first one, right, I have a principal of $15,000, my interest rate is 5.12%, and it's within 5 years, what is going to be my interest for the first problem here? You're going to take your 15,000.
Times late. 3,840.
Okay. Times time, which is 5. Oop, times 5. Right? You're going to get 3,840. Okay, so then what is my principal going to be?
18,840.
Good. All right. So this is where I would encourage you to use your equal round, but we can do it without today. So in this case, right, what about this one, huh? If I have $4,521.50 principal, I have an interest rate of 2.45%, and it's going to be 90 days time frame.
We just have to divide the 90 days by 365 equals years per day. Well,
Not,
get the
not 365. That's a good guess, but not 365.
Do we need to convert 90 days to a year?
Yes. How do you do that?
We divide this 3. No, wait. It's about quarter.
How did you get a quarter?
Because there's 12 months in a year, and then 90 days about 3 months.
Okay.
3 months is a quarter of a year.
Good. So in this case, that's how you figure it out, right? In this case, so in this case, we know that 30 days is equivalent to 1 month, right? Equals 1 month. Okay? And we know,
So you get the extra 5 days free.
yes, basically, because in reality, when you're looking into a real business, they don't count that 31st day, right? They only count 30 days. Okay, so in this case, 30 days equals 1 month, and then 90 days, right, equals 3 months. So what is 3 months compared to a year? 3 months, right? Or actually, let's say 1 year is equal to 12 months, right? So if I'm looking at 3 months out of 12, right? That will give me 90 days. So in this case, what is 3 divided by 12? That will, so 90 days will equal, so what is it? 3 divided by 12 would give you a quarter of a year. So in this case, how do I figure out how much interest I'll be collecting if it's a quarter of a year?
Divide 2.45 by 4, and that gives you the percentage decimal for 1/4.
Okay, that's a good one, but it's not 4. Okay, yeah, 4 out of 12 months, right? Actually, no, that's not a quarter. Sorry. So in this case, you have the choice. You can either use the decimal, or you can literally just go ahead and multiply across, right? 3 months out of 12, right? That will give you the most accurate answer, okay? So instead of doing a quarter, right? But it's the same thing here, right? You could go ahead and multiply it by a quarter, or you can multiply it by 3 divided by 12. That's going to give you the same exact answer, okay? So in this case, how much interest am I going to be collecting from the second scenario?
I got $27.69.
Good. So that means my future value is going to be $4,549.19. Okay. Now here's a little easier one. Okay, you have 6 months now. Okay, so in this case, what is my interest if it's my principal is $384,125.22. Interest rate is 7.89%, and you have it for 6 months.
$15,153.74.
Good, 74 cents. So that's going to give you your future value to be
$399,278.96.
good. Okay. So that's how I deal with when I have an occasion where I have a short-term loan that isn't valued in time, right, of years. So in this case, I have a short-term bank bond or short-term loan for 6 months. Okay. All right. So that's how you do it. Yes.
So when we use the round to do the future value,
Mhm.
do you recommend that we use the round future in the interest part or the future value?
Interest.
Okay, so we round up or round down on the interest, and then we add the principal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. In this case, I didn't show it to you just because in this case, right, Excel will kind of display it in a way where you don't have to do it, but yes, it is recommended to use that, especially when you do compound interest. For sure, that is definitely recommended, but for the sake of this class, that's already too many formulas on top of formulas. So in this case, I'm only going to do what the formula originally asks you to do. But yes, recommended, especially for interest, because that's when you're dealing with percentages, and the percentages are multiple digits. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at question 3 here. Question 3 asks, okay, if, right, you decided you were approved, okay, for a bank loan for $5,500 and the interest rate is 6.25% and it's compounded monthly. All right, how much interest will be collected if you decided to pay it off in 5 years? Okay, so now we have an interesting new feature here. So how are we going to solve for the interest here and the future value? So in this case, right, in the formula for interest is future value minus principal. So that means I am forced to solve for future value first, which is here. The formula is right here. So let's go ahead and practice how to do it on Excel, right? So this is what I'm going to do. You need to put the equal sign to activate your formula, right? First thing I need to do is I need my principal. So in this case, my principal is 5500. We're going to put the asterisk to represent it's being multiplied, okay? It's very specific that you have to do that, right? You can sometimes get away with just putting the parentheses right away, but this one at least ensures that you're multiplying something, okay? So we're going to do our parentheses first, our first open parentheses, okay? We're going to add in our 1 because it's the rate plus 1, okay? Plus, we're going to open up our parentheses one more time. See, now notice this now. It's a red parentheses, okay? My rate is 0.0625. We're going to put the backslash to represent my division. And this is going to be divided by the total number of compounded, right? So in this case, it's being compounded every month, so it's 12 times. Okay? I'm going to close off my parentheses twice, okay? So red and black, all right? I'm going to locate where my caret is. In this case, it should be your shift 6, okay? So shift 6, okay? Open up that parentheses one more time because I need to calculate the n times time separately. So in this case, 12 times how many years again? 5 years. Close off my parentheses, okay? And then now, after I plugged in everything in there, I can go ahead and press enter, and I get $7,511.51. So that's how I use Excel to plug in my answers or plug in the formula into my Excel to get my future value. Okay? If you're using a calculator, you're gonna possibly enter it in the same exact way, but on your calculator, I don't know how it's laid out, right? If you're using a Casio, it's a little more difficult than you are using a Texas Instrument. The Texas Instrument is pretty straightforward. You can punch it exactly how it looks like right here on this Excel spreadsheet. Where the Casio one, you might have to do a shift and, et cetera, okay? So, again, your best bet is if you can't use your calculator, use Excel. That's what this class was meant for, is for you to be able to use Excel to help you calculate all of these things. So in this case, my answer here is $7,511.51. So therefore, how much interest am I actually collecting after 5 years?
$2,011.
Correct, right? 2011 and 51 cents is your interest. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and practice that formula using this one right here. So this is the same exact one as the simple interest, but I'm adding in one key feature. So in this case, the same principal, same interest rate, and same time frame, but this time I have a number times compounded. Okay, so let's walk me through how you would calculate the very first one. If I borrow $15,000 at 5.12% compounded every quarter, so 4 times a year, and the time frame is 5 years. So how do I plug in my numbers into my formula?
It's 15,000 times parentheses 1 plus parentheses 0.0512 divided by 4 and close the parentheses twice to the exponent. And then we have a multiple of number times 4 times 5.
In this case, remember, don't forget that parentheses, because if you don't, it's going to multiply it by the n times, and then it's going to multiply the 5 years after everything's finished.
Yes.
Okay, so you need the open parentheses. So 4 times 5.
And close the parentheses.
So what do you get?
I got $19,344.80.
Okay, good. Okay, so then how much interest will I be collecting on this one?
$4,344.84.
Okay. All right, so we don't have to explain the next one. So what did you get for the answer for the second one? If I decided to have a principal of $4,521.50, interest rate is 2.45%. It's compounded 2 times, and the amount of time is 90 days. $90 days is 0.25% of a year.
I have $4,549.11.
Okay, so how much interest have I collected?
$27.61.
$27.61. Good. All right. Last one. Okay. We have a the principal was $3,084,125.22. Interest is 7.89%, and it's for 3 times a year, and it's with the span of 6 months. Okay, so we got principal times 1 plus the rate divided by number of times compounded, okay, to the up root of number of times compounded times time, which in this case is 0.5. Okay, so what do you get for your future value here?
$399,378.16.
Okay, so then therefore my interest is going to be
$15,252.90.
So let's compare and contrast, right? So this is compounded interest versus, right, where in question 2 here, this was simple interest. So in this case, right, I definitely got more for my first one. I got $19,000 worth of, $3,000 worth of interest, right, was definitely more for the compounded, right? We got 4,000, right? However, this one right here was $27.61, where simple interest only generated me $27.69. So in this case, simple interest was a little better, right? We got 8 pennies more. Okay? And then, of course, the last one, you got 15,153 compared to 15,252. So in this case, only $100 difference. So that's the difference between simple and compound, okay? So last question or last exercise before we go on a break here, okay? So our job and duty is to, let's actually practice journalizing and calculating the interest. So here for question number 5, journalize the bank loan, okay, from example number 3. And of course, the bank loan was made on June 1st of 2020. Okay. And of course, monthly payments are variable, okay, and due every first of the month, okay? And there are no hidden fees or 0% APR. That means you don't get what do you call it? You don't get that grace period, right? You get charged the interest right away, okay? So then, of course, the bank loan is effective immediately, okay? And of course, you're going to be journalizing the first 3 months of payments. So let's go ahead and dive right into what was the bank loan that we took out on June 1st in question number 3. So in this case, you were approved for a bank loan for $5,500 with an interest rate of 6.25%. And again, that's just the two numbers that you need. And you're already given that you're going to be compounded again every month. So that means you need to take that number and divide it by 12 because you're going to be calculating the monthly interest on it. So again, you took a loan for $5,500 with an interest rate of 6.25%. So let's journalize the first one, which is we got a bank loan. So June 6th or June 1st, right? How did I acquire a bank loan?
We got cash in checking.
Cash or checking, good.
Well, it's checking. We got money in the checking.
Okay.
And then we also got bank loan account.
Good. Ready? I want it left align. My bad. Okay. And then we got a bank loan, okay? What about the interest? Interest does not get charged when you acquire the loan for the first month, right? Because you haven't accrued time on it. So in this case, you're just going to record that you received the bank loan for how much? $5,500. Okay. So in this case, however you want to figure this or utilize this table however you like. In this case, my principal is $5,500. Was I charged interest? In this case, for the month of June, you are not, but you do need to calculate it what it was for the month of July. So in this case, let's see, what is our interest rate going to be for the month?
0.
Okay, I see what you mean. For the month of June, it's going to be 0. Yes, okay. So that's how you want to calculate it. That's fine. So we can go ahead and see what our monthly interest is, which is 0. So that means my current balance is going to be this, right? So then that means my new balance, because of course, I haven't made a payment yet, is $5,500. Now, what happens when my principal is $5,500? How much interest will I be charged for the month of July? If okay.
$28.65.
How did you figure that number out?
Well, it's at 6.25% interest annually.
Correct.
12 months. So 6 months would be 0.0005 or something like that. I don't remember. I can't see that.
No worries. It's okay. Good. No, that's correct. So it's 0.00 5208, right? So this is where
And
I
then
do need to
multiply it by
use,
the principal.
good. So this is where I'm going to use my equal round, okay? Because I'm dealing with real numbers now, right? So in this case, that gave me my $28.65. So then what would my current balance be?
56,2865.
Right? Because you have to add the interest to your principal. Okay, so that means when you receive the bill, it was for a grand total of $5,528.65. So, if in July you decided to make a payment of $200, how am I going to journalize the payment of $200? So it's July 1st, because right, payments are made every first of the month. So how would my payment affect this bank loan?
Okay, you have a debit to the bank loan,
You gotta make it
debit to the credit,
good,
and credit.
good, right? So you're gonna have a bank loan, you're gonna have the interest expense, and then you're going to credit your checking account because you're making a payment, right? Now, in this case, I'm making a payment of how much?
Okay, your bank loan gets 171.35. Your interest expense is 28.65, and checking takes you 200.
Okay, so 71.35, right? So now we have to take that money out, right? So what is my new principal now going to be if I made the payment of $200?
5,328.65.
Okay, so then now we need to plug that into my principal because that's my new principal now. So I need to go ahead and recalculate how much interest I'd be charged for the month of August. Okay, so in the month of August, if I were to multiply the interest, right, for the month of August, how much interest would I be calculated?
I have $27.75.
Good. So then my principal will become, or my current balance.
Is $5,356.40.
All right. So if I made a payment on August 1st for $250 this time, how much is actually going to go towards the principal? So in this case, how would my journal look like for August 1st? Well, it'd be the same accounts. Okay. But the difference here is how much if I'm making a payment for $250. How much was my interest that I have to cover in the month of August?
2775.
Good. So therefore, how much am I actually going to make a payment to my actual bank loan?
$222.25.
See? So again, the higher we pay, the more we're actually tapping into our principal. Right? So therefore, if that's the case, I made a payment, so then my new principal is going to be, all right, $5,106.40. So then, if I were to calculate for September, because I need to journalize the first 3 months payment, okay, right? So that means my new principal is $5,106.40. I'm gonna multiply by that 0.0520 because that's how much interest for the month. calculate that, is going to give me a total of $26.60. So that's going to give me my new principal of, or current balance, excuse me, of $5,133 even. So how much is my next payment going to be if I paid $300 on September 1st? Okay. So if I decide to make a payment of $300 on September 1st, right? And my principal was $26.60, how much money is actually going to go towards my bank loan?
$273.40.
Right, $273.40. So again, that is why they recommend you to pay over the minimum payment that you have there, and so on and so forth, because it actually dips into your actual principal. But again, if you make multiple payments on your loan, then you're actually paying your principal off a lot more quicker. But you also have to remind you that you have to call the bank and say, my second payment, I want it to go to the principal. Because if you don't, they're actually going to make you pay the interest first. Again, because that's how they make their money. Okay? So in this case, I would be now at $4,832 even. All right, so again, this is what happens when you're dealing with a bank loan and how paying it off slowly, right, and how it affects your actual principal. Okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and stop here for our break.